Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. Glad to have you here today on the show. Excited to get started with our second round of Cabral House Calls for the weekend. So what we do each and every weekend is answer our community's questions to the best of my ability, always drawing upon the now well over 300,000 client appointments that I've been fortunate enough to oversee in my practice, and also just from taking in the wisdom from Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, herbalism, bioregulatory medicine, orthomolecular medicine, much of which we are seeing being used now currently in the news. And so that's the nice thing, is that if you really understand and you really stay open to all forms of medicine, you can truly find the answers that you've been searching for. So you don't always find the answers that you're searching for in terms of your health, your wellness in both mind, body, and spirit by only looking at one form of medicine. So for example, let's say that you're looking for answers for gut-based issues from Ayurveda alone. Now, Ayurveda is the science of life. It is the original form of medicine. The most wisdom held anywhere is in Ayurvedic medicine. However, there are certainly easier ways now in 2020 in order to be able to heal your gut through Ayurvedic medicine, herbs, and dieting alone. We use Ayurvedic herbs and we use Ayurvedic medicine, but we're not afraid to use things like biofilm disruptors and specific strains of probiotics in order to repopulate the gut. So it's my belief that, again, if you can stay open and you can stay willing to experience the journey, and that means this, that you have something wrong with you, you have an imbalance, or a family member does, you start at point A, which is accumulating the knowledge. So you have to know as to why you may have this particular issue, be it autoimmune, be it gut, be it hormonal, toxicity, etc. And then you begin to implement a plan based on lab results or based on your symptoms of what you know or believe that you have. And that is your starting point. And then you begin to work the process. So we know that the protocols we use at Equilibrium Nutrition, because they work. And here's why. Because they're not online protocols. They were used and are used in actual clinical practice. So for many, many years, before Equilibrium Nutrition was even a thought in my mind, I was just simply a practicing doctor of naturopathy, functional medicine practitioner, integrative health practitioner. And I was just working in my clinic in Boston and not necessarily minding my own business, but that's what I was doing. I got away from shooting video. I got away from doing anything. And the reason that I came online in the first place doing podcasts, and eventually I'll get back to my video, is that I simply wanted to share with what I knew was working. Now, I didn't do that my first year in practice. I did that after a decade in practice. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to share with people what we already know works. We're going to give them all the products that we know works. We're going to give them the labs that they can use. We're going to sign off on those labs so it would be as if they were working with us right in Boston. And if they don't want to work with us, that's okay. That's okay. Here's what we use. Please feel free to do this yourself. And so, but remember, it's a starting point. And typically it's going to work right off the bat. But you are an individual. And so if a shopping list says, well, you can have broccoli, but you eat broccoli and you get gas from it, or bloating, or distension, it doesn't mean the plan doesn't work, and it doesn't mean the list doesn't work. This goes for any doctor, by the way. What it means is that broccoli just isn't going to work for you at this moment in time. Move on to other vegetables. So it's kind of like that old saying, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater for any doctor or practitioner you're working with. And I'm saying this for the 1,000+ integrative health practitioners out there. I'm saying this for functional medicine doctors. I'm saying this for even your medical doctor as well. You know, you get put on a pharmaceutical or whatever it might be, and that's the route that you want to take. Okay, no judgment here. If it doesn't work, there are others that you may be able to use. So that's all. I want everyone who hears this message to rebalance their body, to get well, to essentially change their body, change their life, which is the tagline of Cabral Concept. Because if you can change your body and you can regain your health in both mind, body, and spirit, which means you have the energy and the mindset to be able to do now with your body what you want to do in life, well, it's life-changing. And I experienced that myself and never thought it would come true. And when it did come true, I said, okay, this is it. This is what I'm dedicating my life to. So a little bit of a rant to start the Cabral House Call, but hopefully it was helpful. And now let's get into the show answering our community's questions. All right, this first question is from, I'm just opening the document right now, so I apologize about a few second delay here. Today is episode 1528. So if you go to stevencabral.com/1528, you can follow along with the questions. And of course, if for any reason you didn't tune into yesterday's show, that was episode 1527. And you can go to stevencabral.com/1527. That's where yesterday's Cabral House Call was. Okay, so first question is from Lucas. Lucas says, Dear Dr. Cabral, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your daily podcast. They've been educated and changing me in my everyday life. Moreover, your mission of spreading knowledge about health and well-being helped me to chance everyday being and of my family and friends. Help me to change. I apologize. I know a lot of people write this quickly. I'm not the one to ask for help. I've been blessed with good health, but this is a special circumstance for my friend. I live in Amsterdam, and it's been very warm, and this is an ambitious and loving group of people. Since 2019, one of my best girlfriends has been diagnosed with Ehlers danlos type 4 issues. Apparently, it's been running in her family. Her mother got paralyzed, passed away, and her uncle passed away as well. I've done your 21-day detox last August 2019. I'm an ex-professional athlete, and I especially since then, I believe in the healing power of the body and the teaching of Ayurveda and its healing methods. Could you please help me by helping out explain the nature of this disease and how to possibly solve it? I, in my social circle, appreciate everything you do. Every day is a pleasure. Thank you. Much love, Lucas. Lucas, thank you very much for writing in. I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing the message about what we are doing, not just me, but what our entire community is doing to push forward natural health in general. I want you to know that on the Cabral House Call and any show, that everyone can go to stevencabral.com/podcasts. Okay? So I'm going to go there right now. stevencabral.com/podcasts. Now, you wrote in, I'm going to give you the date, on 2/14. All right? So April 14th. So I'm going to give you stevencabral.com/podcast, type in Ehlers danlos, and you'll see that on January 18th, I actually talked about that particular syndrome or dis-ease in the body. And yes, there is a genetic component to it, but we always have to ask ourselves what allowed for that genetic component to be displayed essentially in our everyday life. So please do check out that show. It's the full answer. That's episode 1443. For those people unfamiliar with Ehlers danlos, it is a connective tissue disorder and quite rare, very rare actually. I know that there's, I believe it's per year, less than 25,000 or so cases in the United States. From my previous research, I believe that's true, but you can look that up. And there's 330, 340 million people or so in the United States. So very, I would say, rare. But again, we need to look, why is this happening, right? What's going on with this connective tissue-based disorder that affects the joints? It can affect blood vessels. And I would go back to really looking at all of the different toxicities. And then I would also be looking at methylation-based issues. So, first and foremost, I would run what's called the starter kit. So my recommendation for your friend, and obviously you're a great friend, is to run the starter kit at Equilibrium Nutrition. And that's looking at gut-based function, all your vitamins, all your minerals, detox, etc. So hopefully that's helpful. And we do ship to Amsterdam, I'm pretty sure. So you could work with a local doctor over there or that specializes in this, or of course, we're happy to help you out. Thank you, Lucas, for writing in. Joelle is up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I have a question about babies 1 year and up. My daughter, who is 1, constantly gets ear infections. You spoke of garlic oil and drops from the herb farm that you put in your daughter's ears. Is this for all ages? Also, you've been speaking of red meat and how we should only eat it once a week. Does this go for children as well? The nurses and doctors here are saying babies and children should be eating meat once a day, every day. I'm torn between listening to them and myself and feeling guilty when I reduce her meat intake. What do you think? Thanks. Okay, Joelle, thank you for writing in. And, there's a couple things here. So If your child, anyone's child, gets an earache really more than once a year, twice at the very, very most, then there's a chronic-based issue going on there. It could actually be yeast candida growth in the ear. It could be bacteria. It could be water getting into the ear canal, or for whatever reason, fluid being built up. Those are just easier circumstances, I would say, to kind of look at and figure out. Again, Joel, if you were to do one test, I would do the candida, vitamins, and metabolic test, or metabolic and vitamin test. It's, again, all of these are at Equilibrium Nutrition. And the reason why I say that is I just want to look at candida overgrowth in your daughter. Now, the second part is we use a couple things for earaches in my house. The first one is the Nutribiotic. That's the name of the company. They're ear drops. It literally just says Nutribiotic ear drops. We use the garlic oil, just like you mentioned. For years, my wife and I came up with the recipe. My wife did the doing, and simply took some olive oil and sauteed a little bit of garlic in it. And then, of course, we allowed it to cool. Then we strained that and we put it in one of the amber dropper bottles. All we did was we had a leftover vitamin D bottle, and that's all we had. So really easy, right? So we just recycled those bottles. So then whenever they would get an earache, we would just put in 2 to 3 drops in each ear. And we would then heat up some dry rice in a pan and wrap that in a little hand towel that we would have in our kitchen. And they would put that over their ear. And that's what we do. And again, these are the best of Ayurveda, the best of functional medicine, all combined. So that's what we do. Look deeper. I mean, my daughters don't really get earaches anymore. They're now 5 and 7. They did when they were younger. Remember, the smaller you are, the smaller those ear canals as a child, so they can be blocked a little bit more easily. So that's what we've done. Now, about meat. Well, so the thing is this. It's not an easy answer to give you. I give advice for adults on my podcast. I'm not giving children's advice. So it's just a little bit different. I do have a podcast on children's health, and you can definitely check that out. Yes, so it doesn't have to be red meat. Red meat is a misnomer of why you'd have to use that every day. That's certainly not the case. But let's make this easy. If you are trying to grow, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy are the most anabolic foods. Let me repeat that. If you want your body to grow as an adult or a child, the most anabolic foods, as told by Ayurveda as well, and now in functional medicine, we know it's the most anabolic because they increase the most growth hormone. Okay, so let's say we want to get bigger, like a bodybuilder as an adult, put on more muscle, or a child. Well, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy are going to help with that, right? So yes, I actually feel that children are not going to get the same detriment of eating meat once a day or so that an adult might, okay? Now, here's the difference. There's a huge difference between eating grass-fed or pasture-raised or wild-caught animal-based foods, okay? That includes fish, etc. Huge difference. It has less omega-6s. So it is a big difference. They're less inflammatory. Do they need to eat it every day? No, I don't think that's necessarily the truth. But the smaller the child, the more you may give them anabolic-based foods. Now, I want to give you the flip side of that. A child never has to eat meat in order to be healthy. They could eat fish, they could have eggs, or they could even be vegan. I don't necessarily know if vegan as a child is the very best thing, but I have plenty of friends and I help plenty of families who want to maintain a vegan lifestyle and diet plan with their children and themselves for a diet plan. And you know what? They're very, very healthy. And their kids aren't sick very often. So there's a happy medium between the two. You know, I don't believe in cow's milk and giving that to children. Hopefully there's a happy medium with all of that. Sometimes our kids eat meat or animal-based products every day, and sometimes they don't. But so hopefully that helps. But again, yes, if you want to grow, meat is a more anabolic food. There's no doubt about it. And so now we just have to be careful with how much we give to each individual for overall health. And I know it's not a straightforward answer because there is no straightforward answer. It's whatever's best for that person's body. A Vata Pitta or more of a Vata body type, they're going to need more anabolic foods. They're less likely to have to deal with all of the high blood pressure, et cetera, issues. But anyway, we'll keep it at that for that. So hopefully that helps. Of course, I'll be talking more about this in the future. Okay, Kelly's up next. Hi, Dr. Cabral. Thank you for your knowledge you provide. I have done your CBO protocol twice without cheating during both, and I still test positive to candida and my symptoms are still the same. I use the GSE drops and GI balance and it still hasn't fixed yet. I obviously don't want to do a third CBO because, as the saying goes, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. I only had low levels of heavy metals and wasn't told anything about mold for my tests. What would you recommend me doing now? Okay, so I want to make sure that you're actually working with our office, because if you did a mold test, we would certainly tell you all about that. And our CBO protocol does not include GI balance. So GI balance is something we would use for what's called a modified CBO protocol. The CBO protocol is actually 3 different products for each month for 3 months. And we've used it thousands and thousands of times to rebalance people's gut. Now, let's say that we do, and the only way to know is to run that what's called Candida metabolic and vitamin-based test, also known as the organic acids test. And then you would say, okay, did your Candida go down, or is it still the same, or is it going up? And what we'd want to do is look at that in terms of bacteria as well. I would just want to make sure you're not the type of person where stress is affecting your gut motility. Because remember, you can self-induce SIBO, which could also lead to Candida overgrowth. And I don't know what your bacterial levels were at. So people that are overly stressed are the only people that we don't see, or we see relapse. Now, they typically get better, so things are looking good, and then they relapse whenever they come off nutritional supplements. And the reason is they're not using these things like oregano oil and clove and monolaurin. And I mean, again, like sky's the limit. We use everything inside of those products so that it's more systematic, or I should say synergistic, because you never know. Some people will respond to oregano, some will respond to clove, some will respond to pau d'arco, some will respond to monolaurin. So we actually use them each month and we rotate them so that you get the most effects possible. So again, it's kind of a long answer for saying that if you're using the GI balance, it's not the CBO protocol, it's the modified CBO protocol, although a great product. And we do use it when there's a little left, right? So if there's a little left, we'll say, okay, let's use a 4-week protocol of the citracidal, not GSE drops, by the way, they're called citracidal drops, and the GI balance. That's why I just want to make sure you're working with us on this protocol. So that's that. And then what would I recommend you doing? Well, I would look at, is this a bowel motility issue? And is this a stress issue? Where the body literally keeps that ileocecal valve open. That means, if you've never heard me talk about that before, so basically you have 21 feet, 23 feet of small intestine. That's the first part of the intestine. And then it empties into the last part. That's a large intestine, also called the colon. And that's about 5 or 6 feet long. Well, that colon in small intestine is meant to be a one-way street, right? So the small intestine empties into the large intestine. The large intestine should never back up into the small intestine, but it does with people with ileocecal valve dysfunction. And that typically happens from stress, mainly from stress, but it can happen from different types of medication as well. So I don't know enough about your health history. I don't know if you're on an antacid. If you're on an acid blocker for your stomach, that could allow for more yeast overgrowth or bacteria because not enough acidity is created in the stomach and then not enough bile is dropped from the liver. So there's so many different things that it could be. I really recommend you work with your health coach at this point, right? Because if you're a more challenging case, and we work with very challenging cases, so you're not the only one, that you just need to take it to that next level. And that just means that there's some tweaking that needs to be done. That's all. But really, in terms of like what you're going to get in terms of Candida killing based products, the biofilm disruptors, the Saccharomyces boulardii, and all of those antimicrobial herbs really are the way to go, like for sure. So Kelly, hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Kelly, you wrote, looks like 3 questions in a row. So let me get Kelly's questions. All right. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I know you don't recommend doing the carnivore diet for a long period of time, and I agree with you, but what do you think? Could it help with getting rid of Candida, especially after doing the CBO protocol? Here's the thing. Please check out my podcast on why Candida diets don't work. And the reason is this, is that it does shrink the gut microbiome, which is actually a bad thing. So what you're doing is you're shrinking bacteria and you're shrinking Candida. However, if you had overgrowth in the first place, well, that would actually be helpful in the short term, right? But the problem is what you're doing is a diet that is very imbalanced. It's going to be high in fat and it's going to be high in protein. Please don't ever forget that a high protein diet that's low in fat is extremely difficult on the kidneys. Very, very difficult on the kidneys. So be careful with that. Carnivore diets don't even work unless you add in the extra fat. You certainly can't be doing lean cuts of beef. It just does not work. So, okay. So do I agree with it? No. And you can check out my podcast on why for the carnivore diet. But yes, it would actually shrink the gut microbiome. And that includes Candida and includes bacteria. And the reason is that you're not feeding them, right? But fermentation can still happen if you have low gut acid, and fermentation can still happen if you have low bile. The other issue is this. You can still create lipopolysaccharides from the saturated fat in the carnivore diet, so you can still create inflammation. However, you're not getting the overgrowth of the bacteria, specifically with SIBO and Candida. So people can experience absolutely short-term benefits of less joint pain, less inflammation from that. So what I'm saying is this: you could certainly do what I call an autoimmune elimination or something like that, which would be really, really helpful. And of course, if you want to do the carnivore diet for a few weeks, you're welcome to. The problem is you eventually have to eat carbohydrates again. Everyone does. And when you do, well, things are going to grow back, and they're going to grow back proportionally, because you didn't just eliminate the bad, you also eliminated a lot of the good. And that's the problem with these low-carb diets in the long term. All right, hopefully that was helpful. Kelly, let's get through your last one, and then we'll call it a weekend of house calls. All right, this is just the same question repeated. So, Kelly, we answered your question for the week, and let's get one more in. All right, John's writing in, "Hi, Dr. Ball. Thank you in advance for your help. I was taking a steroidal nasal spray for my dust mite allergy. That was helping a lot. I must have histamine intolerance and mast cell activation because I've never been able to push myself too hard in the gym without my nose running like crazy for 3 days. After about a month of the nasal spray, I started getting bad anxiety out of nowhere. I believe the nasal spray has done something to my H3 receptor, causing anxiety. What do you think may have happened to cause the anxiety? I've ordered your His Pro, but I am not as hopeful, even though it has natural antihistamines to stop my nose from running hard at the gym, but don't stop the anxiety. Am I right in saying that antihistamines only work on H1, H2 receptors, and that this is not helping the anxiety? Please help." Okay. Well, John, I think we can make this a little bit easier because you're obviously well-read, and so, John, I can appreciate that. And you've gone a little bit down the rabbit hole, and I can appreciate that. So, but there's levels and there's different parts to this. So here's the issue. Certainly, I agree with you. There's a histamine intolerance. There's a greater mast cell activation, no doubt about it. But it most likely stems from potentially some type of gut permeability or chronic infection, chronic viral issues like an Epstein-Barr. It could be something going on. But what's happening is it's actually disturbing your Th1 to Th2 immune system balance. And that means that, so you're Th2 dominant most likely right now. And so what happens is when you work out, you actually exacerbate the Th2 dominance. So if you work out really hard, if you were to work out to a lighter degree, some body weight workout, some light cardio, you'd probably be okay. So that is what you may have to do in the short term while you're fixing whatever these underlying root causes are. And yes, I believe in the quercetin and nettles that are in the His Pro and the alkalizing vitamin C along with that. There's no doubt about it. And I would use a good amount of that while you're having these issues. What we really need to look at with all allergies, it's how I got rid of mine, is detoxing and emptying that rain barrel. I had to fix my H. pylori, my Candida overgrowth, and my SIBO. Okay, that was really important for me. Then, and at the same time, I had to empty that rain barrel. I had to remove a lot of the toxins from my body. So that's a big part of it. Now, let's talk about, though, the anxiety. Well, the anxiety most likely came from the allergy-based medicine you were using. You don't name the nasal spray, but I'll tell you this. Most nasal sprays are a form of corticosteroids. They increase either cortisol and or norepinephrine. If you look at the back of most pharmaceuticals for over-the-counter for allergies, they are norepinephrine or pseudoephedrine based. So they're spiking your body's ability to produce more steroid hormones, norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline, in order to stimulate an anti-inflammatory effect and suppress a lot of this mast cell activation. That's how it works. So over time now, you've been just burning your body out, right? You've been like stimulating the body, almost like an amphetamine. And then what happens is your body starts to crash a little bit. You're feeling it as anxiety. It can also start to burn out a lot of the magnesium in the body at a functional level. Of course, your body's going to have magnesium, but at a functional based level as you're drawing more and more calcium into the bloodstream every time you use the nasal spray. So the problem is you can't just stop the nasal spray. You're most likely going to have to work with your doctor because, again, only medical doctors can give medical advice to wean off that slowly. I would also be using magnesium. There's no doubt about it, even if you only had to use it at night. So that will help for sure. Magnesium seems to be really, really powerful. I use it myself. B vitamins and magnesium for allergies. I certainly use my own allergy protocol and a lot of vitamin C, a lot of alkalizing vitamin C. So, at one time I was using between 5 and 10 grams a day. And now I've weaned that down on a typical daily basis. I take between 1 and 2 grams. So, John, hopefully this was helpful, and obviously we're here to help. So let us know. But thank you everyone for tuning into today's show. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your reviews of the show and for your shares as always. Have an amazing rest of the weekend, and I'll talk with you tomorrow on our Mindset and Motivation Monday. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stevencabral.com/resources.